Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, this is House Bill 546 by Representative Presley relative to professional engineers to provide for the use of certain terms relating to the practice of engineering, to provide for general provisions, to provide for definitions, to provide for enforcement proceedings, and to provide for related matters.
All right, thank you. Representative Presley on your bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. This is an issue that was brought to me by my friends Patrick Caraway, who's with me today, as well as Graham Walker, who's the CEO of a company named Fiberbond up in Shreveport. In the Shreveport area, it's actually in Minden. And it's an example of the licensing turf wars that are, in my opinion, holding our state back and stifling commerce and industry in Louisiana. In 1982, Claude Walker founded Fiberbond after recognizing the need for strong, durable, aesthetic shelters to protect equipment. The private company's growth required it to expand to a small site in Webster Parish, or from its original site in Bossier City to its current location in Webster Parish, which is a 180-acre site in Minden. Today, Fiberbond specializes in the manufacturing of complex engineered-to-order structures that protect people and mission-critical equipment for use in data center, petrochemical, power, and telecom industries. Fiberbond's engineering and product management team consists of individuals who are degreed in construction management, electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, electrical power engineering technology, biomedical and chemical engineering, as well as civil engineering. On the team bio page, each team member identifies their team role, experience, and their STEM degree, many of which were obtained at Louisiana universities. What you will not see on that website is that what you will not see is anyone holding themselves out to be a professional engineer as defined by statute, and over whom this legislature gave regulatory authority to LAPELS, the Louisiana Professional Engineering and Land Surveying Board. Further, whenever the law requires a professional engineer on a building project that the Fiberbond team uses outside professional engineers for the review and approval of those plans. What this legislation is doing is modernizing, in my eyes, the term engineer and engineering. We all know that this term is something that's commonly used in our vernacular, right? Software engineers, they're not licensed from labels, they're lapels. Railroad engineers, the people that are actually driving the train down the track, are also known as engineers. A lot has been said about the different terms. Doctor is another term that's used often. You can go down a few blocks away and find an iPhone doctor. Do we walk in expecting an actual medical doctor or a PhD? No. If you're at a university, we hear doctors all the time. They're PhDs. They're not medical doctors necessarily. And so what we're doing is trying to modernize that word engineer and making sure that just as other states have done, such as Texas, and we want to make sure that our STEM graduates and the high-paying jobs that are that are at companies like Fiberbond are able to continue right here in Louisiana. With that, I'm going to turn it over to my good friend Patrick Caraway to talk a little bit more about his experience in this issue.
Yeah, thank you. So my name is Patrick Caraway. I'm the Chief Financial Officer of Fiberbond Corporation in Minden, as Thomas mentioned. Currently, we employ 8 people that we refer to as engineers. 6 of those attended Louisiana Tech University in Ruston, so they got their education in Louisiana, and we refer to them as engineers on our website and on their business cards because that is the degree that they received. We are being currently told by LAPELS that we cannot use that title either on our website or on our business cards, which is why we asked Thomas to propose this bill. I think it's important to know that our engineers only work on our products. So we are not holding ourselves out to offer engineering services to the public. All our engineers do is design our products that we build in Minden and send out. As Thomas mentioned, we pay professional engineers to review and ensure that our designs are being created correctly. In 2022, we spent $337,000 with professional engineers. So we aren't trying to circumvent that part of the process. We're actually using that part of the process correctly. We just want to be able to refer to the people that we have on staff that graduated with a 4-year degree in engineering as an engineer. That's important to them, and it's important to us. I think it's also important to note that back in 2019, Fiberbond, who employs 450 people in Webster Parish, which many of you know where Webster Parish is, that makes us one of the largest employers in the parish, considered moving to East Texas. We had some road issues, which were resolved but still being worked on. But if we were in Texas, we would be able to refer to our people as engineers, because in Texas, it has a carve out in the law that allows people like us that if you are performing engineering tasks within a company that's building a product, you can use that terminology for your title. So again, very important to us and for our engineers to be able to refer to themselves as an engineer.
I have a quick question. I briefly looked at your website last night to figure out what was going on here. And on the first page, I didn't see anything that said that y'all were professional engineers, that anyone, that you didn't hold yourself out to be professional engineers. I did go to the bio pages, I guess, of your staff, and they were listed as having degrees in construction management, electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, chemical engineering, civil engineering, et cetera, et cetera. Is there anywhere on your website that states that y'all are professional engineers? Because the law currently says if you're a professional engineer, you can't hold yourself out to be that.
No.
But I didn't see anywhere on the website where you held yourself out to be a professional engineer.
That is correct. There's nowhere on the website that says that we have professional engineers.
Okay. Representative Hilferty.
Thank you, and I appreciate you guys being a company based in Louisiana, and I appreciate you guys working with us here. My question was, you brought up Texas, and I pulled up, let's see, I'm on the Texas Engineering Practices Act and Rules, and Section 1001.406, it allows somebody who's a graduate of a university recognized by the American Association of Colleges and Universities who has a degree from an engineering program accredited by the Accreditation Board has the right to disclose any college degree, which you guys do on your website, and I saw that. And it also allows them to use the term graduate engineer on the person's stationary business cards or in personal communications of any character. A graduate engineer who is employed by a firm registered under this chapter and who's working under the direct supervision of a licensed professional engineer may use the term engineer on the person's stationery or business cards. So I think you mentioned that in Texas you would be allowed to use the term engineer, but would you have a professional engineer in that context that you would be working under?
So we don't, but I believe, and I can't remember if it's in the same section that you're looking at because I have read that, but there is either another section or further down in that section, it mentions that if the engineer is actually working internally within a company, so they're not holding themselves out to provide engineering services to the public, then they are able to use the term engineer without having graduate in front of it.
I think I understand that. I understand that they're maybe not putting themselves out as engineers, but the website is, I mean, we all in our professional lives use websites as a form of branding and to familiarize ourselves with clients. So I would imagine, that is why you have these really nice bios on here to allow people to understand with whom they're working. So it would seem as though, well, I understand they're not in a sales position, maybe a forward-fronting position within the company, that the website does allow it to be a forward-fronting position, if that makes any sense.
But I think it's clear that these people are working on products that are being built by our company. So they're not holding themselves out to provide engineering services to the public for a third-party type job. It's only them working on our products that we build internally.
Okay. I don't know. I mean, I've read some of the bios. To me, it's engineering director, director of property management and engineering. it would seem, it didn't seem internally facing, but I don't understand, your firm as well as you guys do. So I'll listen to the rest of the testimony. I appreciate it.
Sure, thank you.
Okay, members, we actually have no further questions. Do we have cards? Okay. We do have a card from Scott Landry from Lapels that is present and will provide information as requested. And Donna Centel, Louisiana Professional Engineering and Land Surveying Board, is present and would provide information if requested. And I think that we would like for them to come up.
Thank you.
We also have a card in support from Dr. Aaron Bendeley with the Pelican Institute. And just don't forget to state your name for the record, please.
Good morning. I'm Donna Centel. I'm the Executive Director for Lapels, and I have with me our Board Attorney, Scott Landry.
Okay. Can you, and I know we talked about this earlier, can you explain the situation that went on with Fiberbond with the Lapels Board?
You want me to take this? So, Fiberbond, under the my board members that have reviewed Fiberbond's website, say it connotes to the public that they are providing engineering services, and the website does not indicate that anybody is licensed. Most firms that provide the services that Fiberbond is performing would have professional engineers on staff, at least one, and they would also be licensed. The firm would be licensed by the board. The setup that they have right now with no professional engineer on staff, the firm can't get licensed because the statutes dictate they have to have a professional on staff. And the concern becomes whether or not the public understands the difference between a graduate engineer, and granted, most of the employees there are graduate engineers, as opposed to a professional engineer and the 3,000 engineering firms that we have registered within the state with professional engineers with them. Most all of their employees are eligible to obtain a license by going through the requisite examination process, and I know of at least 2 of them have already made the initial step to do so. They just have not taken the last exam to become professional engineers, which would solve everything relative to the firm Fiberbond.
So companies like Fiberbond that have folks with these credentials on their payroll, are they required to have professional engineers within the company?
It's my understanding, based on the board members' interpretation of the statutes and laws, yes, they need to have a professional engineer on staff to perform the services that they're doing.
Hold on. You have a question? Or feel free.
It's my understanding they might have the plans stamped by a professional engineer who
Correct.
is not within the company.
Right, so the concern is whether or not that professional engineer has been supervising the project from the initial stage as opposed to getting it at the completion stage. It's my understanding the engineers that are hiring outside of the Fiberbond firm are doing the calculations and checking that, but they do not have direct supervision over any of the employees at Fiberbond.
Okay. So is it that there's a supervisory aspect of the professional engineer stamping those plans? That's ultimately what this.
Right. So if the professional engineer were an employee of Fiberbond, they would be responsible for the actions of the employees at the firm and take responsibility for the work that's being done by the non-licensees, because there would be a direct supervisor that's licensed by the board. They don't have that person in their food chain, so to speak. They have 6 or 8 graduate engineers, none of which are licensed.
What about, because the gentleman who testified on behalf of Fiberbond, he, because I asked about the question about the graduate engineer terminology, is there a distinction between an engineer that works on everything internally versus working on things external? Is that a distinction that's made? Like, for instance, a software engineer that works for, I'm just going to pull a random company for Shell or something like that. They refer to themselves as a software engineer. I'm assuming your board doesn't go in and say, well, they can't be referred to as a software engineer because it's clear to the public, I'm guessing, that they're not a professional engineer.
Well, there has been an exam. There is an exam that we could license software engineers. Whether or not the software engineer is licensed, I do not know, but there are exams to examine a software engineer. And that's a little bit different than the electrical and mechanical engineers that are on staff at Fiberbond. You're right, there is some ambiguity with a software engineer.
Okay.
So does the law allow a company to outsource?
I'm going to let my attorney take that one.
Sure, it allows it. It's difficult at times because the engineer, the professional engineer who makes the final review and stamps those plans with their professional seal must be in responsible charge of that work. Responsible charge means lots of things have to be done, including that professional engineer being involved in the project from the very beginning, supervising all of the preparation of the documents and so forth. It becomes more difficult.
So isn't the burden then on the professional engineer to make sure that he wouldn't sign off on final plans, unless he knew that every step of the process were completed to his satisfaction and to what's required by the law or the rules or regs or whatever it may be?
The professional engineers certainly should do that. When they put their seal on it, they are making that attestation that all of that has been done, that they have been in responsible charge.
Okay.
And they are responsible professionally if they've not been. And that's called in this regulatory scheme plan stamping, when that professional engineer stamps those plans, those documents, without having done all of those things. I'll throw this out there on the bill, the specific language in the bill. This bill would allow anyone, you or I or anybody, to open up a business in Louisiana and call ourselves, John Doe Engineering Company. And we could call our employees engineers. And we could provide services to the public. And as long as those services doesn't meet the definition of the practice of engineering, that would be perfectly legal. Okay? You can call yourself whatever you want. Our feeling is that if that becomes the law, that would mislead great numbers of the public. People wouldn't know the difference. It's an engineering firm. That's what they're called. Of course they're doing engineering. That's how people would perceive it. So it's a perception and a misleading of the public, which is one of the big dangers of the terminology.
Okay, Rep. Thomas for a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding this, and then I have a couple of other questions. If one has a degree in civil engineering, for example, mechanical engineering, for example, electrical engineering, for example, then that person has a degree, but in order to be called a professional engineer, that person then has to take and pass an exam.
Actually, it's 2 exams. They would take one at the college level, and then they take one after the 4 years of experience. Most of the people working for Fiberbond have been out of school long enough that they would have the 4 years of experience, and they could go take the test tomorrow. The tests are administered as a CBT test, but the criteria is the same for an attorney, for a doctor. You get the degree, you obtain the education, you take the examinations to determine your minimal competency to practice that profession. CPAs, architects, attorneys, doctors, nurses, engineers, and that's what lets the public know that you have met that minimal competency level to provide services to the public.
And that was my next question then. Are you aware of any profession that does not require that final exam in order to be deemed competent, for example, but in the public's eye?
No, ma'am. And professional boards and professional jobs, and then occupational jobs too, still require an examination to be able to practice their occupation. The same holds true for a
Right.
professional
Teachers.
board. Teachers,
Dentists.
cosmetologists.
Obviously, you've been in the room all day.
I have been.
Yes, well, that was my next line of questioning then, because I could not think of any profession that does not require something at the end
Right.
of course of study in order to be deemed competent in the eyes of the public. So,
We tell young people at the college level that the examinations are there to just determine your minimal competency. Passing the exam doesn't make you the greatest engineer or the greatest land surveyor. You've reached the lowest rung of the ladder to determine your minimal competency to practice engineering.
just a curiosity question: do professional engineers have to do continuing education?
Absolutely. 15 hours every year. One has to be in ethics, and if they design building or building systems, 4 of the 15 hours need to be in code compliance.
Okay. Does someone who has, that's for professional engineers?
Correct.
How about for those who have a degree in engineering but not that professional designation?
The board doesn't have any authority over their continuing hours because they're not a registrant of the board. They have not provided any minimal competency requirements to the board, so they don't, to my knowledge, they're not required to take any CPD hours, is what we call them.
Okay, well, that's a pretty big difference,
Yes, it is.
because I know that I'm looking at attorneys I have to do CLEs, and lots of professions
Most
require
professions
that.
provide some kind of continuing professional development hours. To keep abreast of the laws and rules, but the technological changes, and imagine the technological changes over the past, in your lifetime.
Right.
The technological changes related to the practice of engineering. alone.
Right. I mean, there's you talk about that. I mean, most youngsters don't even know that one of these things used to have a cord attached to it, and you would hang it up and pick it. Anyway,
Right.
that's enough. Yes, rotary
dials.
dial. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Rep. LaFleur.
I'm pretty sure my concerns were taken care of with that line of questioning. No one in this state can hold themselves out to be an attorney unless they've passed the bar.
Absolutely.
So that if we pass this bill, the difference between an engineer and a professional engineer
Gets muddled.
gets merged, gets cloudy, and the public is
Absolutely.
affected by that. Am I
Absolutely.
correct?
Correct.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, members, the board is clear. Representative Presley, do you want to come and close?
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. I just want to respond to a few things. One, and I think it's important in this case to recognize that Fiberbond's doing exactly what they should be doing, which is having a professional engineer involved in the process. They're just using a third-party professional engineer to sign off on paperwork, and I think that's important. There's not a risk to the public. I think that there was one of the witnesses talked about the duties of professional engineers, and that anyone can go out and open an engineering location and call themselves an engineer. Well, iPhone doctors are opening them up. No one expects them to be a doctor. And I think the important words in his comment was, as long as you're not performing engineering work, right? And I think in this case, the work that's being performed by a professional engineer is signed off by a professional engineer. We're simply talking about the word engineer. The title, and I think it's pertinent to know that the Lapels board is dealing with professional engineers. That's the P and E in Lapels. I mean, and I think that's important, because when you look at other professions, right? And while for some reason we couldn't come up with an analogy at the table, we've talked about it previously, right? I mean, an accountant, anyone can call themselves an accountant. They have a role, and an important role for a lot of companies, but they're not necessarily CPAs. They're not certified public accountants, right? Those are the folks that are being governed by the Certified Public Accounting Board. And I think that's an important aspect here. The bottom line is, I believe that Louisiana needs to show that we are open for business. Texas is doing something different. They're able to work with companies like Fiberbond that are using third-party engineers to sign off on their documents. And I think Louisiana needs to do the same thing. And I respectfully request your favorable passage, and I move that we move this bill favorably.
Will you take a question by Representative Newell and close?
I think we're just going to close, if that's okay.
Maybe
Would
take
you,
a question.
would you like for me to take it? I'll
Yes,
take it.
Yes.
We'll take it.
Thank you.
Thank you. So gracious
Sure.
of you. I did press my button before you started.
Okay.
You're close because this is a little out of order. But I had a question about paragraph 13 on page 2. Clarify for me, because to me it looks like it's a paragraph contradicting itself. Because in one part it says a person shall be construed to practice, and then the second, halfway down that paragraph it says a person shall not be construed to be practicing. And to be practicing in the statute, I don't like that, but okay.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's the labeling aspect. So I think in the new language that's there, we're basically allowing the word engineer and engineering to be used in a job title, personnel classification, business title, verbal claim, sign, advertisement, letterhead, card, and similar uses.
Yes,
They're not doing the action of a professional engineer, and I think that's the pertinent part there. But happy to work with you on language as we move forward.
Okay.
There may be a
Explain
simpler
that
way
another way. Yes.
There may be a simpler way to explain it, but that's essentially what we're trying to do, is allow these folks to be able to use the word engineer and engineering in their titles and business cards.
Okay, because we've been.
So I'd be happy to work with you on language.
Yes, please, because
Yeah.
we've been talking about Fiberbond, who might work with someone else. However, this statute isn't for Fiberbond. So anybody in the state
That's right.
can come about and start themselves a sanitation engineering company and call themselves engineers and hold themselves out to do something other than clean the office or pick up the trash.
Well, and I think that's to me the important part here. The word engineer has transformed over time, right? You certainly have software engineers and people that hold themselves out to do software engineering, and as long as they're not performing the same or being under the guides of the Lapels board, then that would be allowed, right? And I think we're trying to walk this line, and I'm again happy to work with you as we move forward with this bill. To make sure that we're, certainly protecting the public, but also allowing folks that have a degree in engineering to be able to use that language and their job titles as well.
And that I'm glad you said it, because that is my concern, wanting to open our state up for business. However, for those who have gone to school, have had the experience in actual engineering,
Yeah.
and ensuring that our constituents are getting the services of whatever kind of engineer they're attempting to hire, and not having people just come up and slap engineer on because they know how to program a computer, or they know how to do something to it, but not necessarily fully trained in that area. Because it's been said multiple times, I don't want folks calling themselves attorney or esquire, because
Sure.
I worked darn hard to be one. I studied hard to be one.
Yep.
And I don't want the profession, let me find a better word than the one I was about to use. I don't want that profession to be watered down by people just claiming themselves to be an attorney. And I know licensed engineers don't want their profession watered down either.
No doubt. And I think, I mean, and I want to be very clear. I'm not trying to allow people that aren't professional engineers to be able to be professional engineers.
Or
But
call
the title,
themselves that.
or call themselves professional engineers, because they're not. But the title is professional engineer. It's PE. That is a known title, just like a CPA title is known. You know, and I mean, and honestly, I think on the bar example, I mean, in 2020, the students that graduated from Louisiana licensed law school all became lawyers.
I still have issues
And
with
there's,
that, but we're not
but they are
discussing
known
that
as
today,
lawyers.
unfortunately. But go ahead.
You know, but I mean, that's a whole nother conversation.
Whole nother one.
But I think that's, you know, I don't take anything away from the professional engineers. What we're trying to do is find a rational and reasonable, you know, opportunity for folks that are degreed in engineering that could go across the state line 15 miles from my house and say, oh, I'm an engineer. And be able to do exactly the same type of work. We're trying to keep Louisiana kids in Louisiana, particularly those that are high-paying jobs, and we want to keep the companies here. And this is something that's affecting an important business in Northwest Louisiana.
It is, and I hope that you are amenable to what the languages to make this a little bit more
Absolutely.
clear, because I've had a lot of calls with a lot of concern, and understandably so, from the way the bill is structured right now, because I am with you, opening up our state, but also protecting the citizens of Louisiana.
And we've had some quality conversation this morning on this bill, off the record and privately, trying to figure out a rational way of moving forward. And I'm very hopeful and optimistic that we'll be able to get there.
I'm glad you said quality conversation. That doesn't always happen in this building. And thank you for taking my question.
Thank you very much, Kay. Representative Malone.
Representative Hilferty has a question on close. She said she'll be quick.
I'll be quick. Okay, in listening to all the conversation, I think we're looking at a pretty specific situation, and it would be my hope that maybe we could pause this bill to allow a more robust conversation to take place between Fiberbond and the Lapels Board, even if it were something showing whatever engineer that stamps your plans, professional engineer, excuse me, that stamps your plans on your website as, you know, not like an of counsel kind of position, you know, of engineering counsel, however you phrase that, something along those effects, so that the public knows there's a tie-in with a professional engineer. He might not be on staff as Fiberbond, but there's a tie-in of some effect. I mean, is that something that could be looked at? Because that, in essence, is what we're facing here, is there's no professional engineer at Fiberbond, as I understand it.
I think it's something that could be mentioned on the website. That's actually part of what we mentioned in the conversation. Now, I don't think that we could specifically mention that person, because there's not an individual person. We work with multiple firms in multiple states. And so I think that we could work on something that says that part of our quality process is that we get all of our drawings reviewed and stamped by a professional engineer. So it's very clear to the public that that's how our process works. But I think as far as naming a specific firm or a person, I think that wouldn't work.
You have my commitment to continue to work on moving this and addressing these issues. And I think that, you know, based on my conversations this morning, certainly appears that Lapels would also like to work on trying to come to a resolution on this.
Yeah, I don't feel comfortable doing I mean, I know we're talking about one firm, and I haven't heard of any other firms that have this specific situation. I have no doubt that there are others, but I personally have not heard from any. I don't think there are any in the audience, and it gives me a little heartburn to legislate, because we're changing the rules for everything, for everyone. And, you know, this doesn't have a little asterisk that says, you know, Fiberbond specific. And so I think that is my concern. I've had engineers in my district express concern along that same line of thinking.
Yeah, and again, you would have my commitment that we'll continue to work on this before it comes to the floor.
Okay, yeah, because I think in its current form, several of us would have, I'll speak for myself, I would have concern about moving this out of the House.
I certainly understand that. Thank you.
Okay. One more, Representative Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a clarification to make on the point that you made about attorneys. There were they were officially made members of the bar, so they are licensed attorneys.
That's right.
I have a problem with that process, but so that would be akin to someone being a licensed professional engineer.
Sure.
So it's
I
not
agree with that,
it's
but-
not apples and apples. It was apples to oranges.
No, I think that I certainly understand that, and again, I'm not going to try to get off on the weeds on that issue, but I think it is true that the folks that graduated from Louisiana law schools, we basically said, okay, they can just become members of the bar, right?
I think they were given provisional status, but yes, they're officially licensed.
They are. I
Okay.
agree.
Okay, no further questions. All right. Representative Presley had, oh wait, I'm sorry. I don't think I read the red cards in. I apologize. Barker Durman, so I apologize. I thought we read the red cards. Did not. So that was your closing, but we still do have opposition.
Okay.
So we're kind of reversing things a little bit today. Barker Durman is present and would like to speak in opposition. Dan Ranson. No, this is wrong bill. Greg Morrison, ACEC, Sherry LeBaud, GEC Engineers, Randy Haney, Louisiana Engineering Society, Ashley Tassan, American Council of Engineering, Miles Williams, Louisiana Engineering Society, Mary Claire Ruckert, Louisiana Engineer Society, and Kimberly McDaniel, Self ASAPE, LES, ACEC. All right, Mr. Durman, and please state your names for the record.
Yeah, Madam Chair, committee members, Barker Durman, representing the American Council of Engineering Companies of Louisiana. We're an association representing 130 firms in the state, almost 6,000 employees. And we're here not necessarily to debate the issue between Fiberbond and lapels, but really the broad stroke of this legislation and the impacts that it could have on public safety in the state. So we talked about the different things. We talked about the cell phone engineer, but like this state is certainly prone to natural disasters, and then people in a sensitive state being taken advantage of when their homes are impacted. So just think about a company that could come in and call themselves the roofing engineer. So we just want to really take a little bit of time. I know we debated the bill for a while, but we just wanted to state our opposition to the broad stroke approach that this legislation would take to solve a very specific problem and the number of problems that it could cause if it is passed. So again, I just wanted to ask for your opposition, no vote for this piece of legislation. Thank you.
I have a question from Rep. Newell for you. Oh, it's not letting me push it. No, one second. Oh, sorry. Hold on. There you go.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice Chair. You mentioned possible problems. Would you be able to elaborate on a few that this would cause?
So, I mean, they would all be hypothetical in a sense, but just being able to put engineer in your name, I think that there, are certain bad actors that could come out of, come from this, be a result from the legislation if they're allowed to post a job title as representing themselves as an engineer for something that would typically require professional engineering services. I just kind of thought of the roofing engineer came to mind because obviously, Hurricane Ida, a lot of roofs had to be repaired. And, by saying roofing engineer, maybe that misleads the public into thinking that, well, this person may have some type of structural training or education and then are licensed, as that professional structural engineer. So I think that there are just circumstances like that would really be opening Pandora's box. So anything that you could think of where someone could take advantage of the opportunity of naming their business or their employees as engineers could result from the way the bill is currently written.
Do you know of any examples, maybe here or somewhere else, where a citizen, a person hired a company or someone else who held themselves out to be an engineer, and there was problems that occurred.
So I don't know that. Again, we're an association that represents the business of engineering, so we really represent the engineering firms. I'm sure Lapels would be able to point to specific examples of where they've worked on that. But getting back to Lapels, as I understand it, and Miles may be able to talk about this more specifically, they'll also issue a waiver for certain companies if they use engineer in their name. So if it's clear that they're not providing professional engineering services, so if you just had the cell phone engineer, if they made it clear that they weren't providing some type of design professional engineer service, that they may issue them a waiver to use that engineer in their name.
And so how would, if a company received that waiver, how would their name look? Would there be like a little asterisk or say that we don't do this? Like, because with all the testimony we've heard, I never heard that there was a waiver that could be used. And could it be used in the situation that we've heard from Fiberbond, who has companies that they work with to approve?
Yeah, so I can't speak to the specifics of that, and I hate that my testimony may have resulted in getting Lapels back up here. I know while we're taking a lot of time, but I can't speak to a specific instance.
So you can't tell me what the waiver
process
looks
is
like?
for the waiver. No.
I mean, what the business name would look like if they had the waiver.
No, I don't know if there's an asterisk that's involved in that. If there's a sub point that says this is not a professional engineer, business or firm.
Okay. Thank you.
So I can weigh in. My name is Miles Williams. I'm representing Louisiana Engineering Society. The way the law is set up now, using the word engineer and engineering implies that you're providing professional engineer or engineering work.
Right.
And the waiver term might not quite be correct. However, there are cases where it's obvious that they're not practicing engineering, and they designate it that way, some way, shape, or form, and that they work through individual cases like that all the time.
Okay. Sir, do you mind stating your name for the record?
Miles Williams, Louisiana Engineering Society.
Thanks, Mr. Williams.
I have a nice statement to make too. However, you've heard it all by now, so.
Okay. Thank you.
Representative Hilford,
Are you done?
I'm finished.
Thank you, Rep. Newell. Okay, I've got Rep. Gudo with a question. Oh, sorry, y'all, I'm having trouble with the.
Thank you, Acting Chair. We all agree that the term engineering can be misleading, correct?
That's correct. And the way the law is set up is it implies you're a professional engineer and that you're being registered by the State Registration Board. And it has to be clear that you're not, if you're going to be allowed to use that term.
Do you think there's another name you could come up with that would categorize them? For example, the state has different categorized areas where it can be stage 1, stage 2. What about engineer number 1, number 2? Engineer would be...
For this specific case, I would imagine that there would be some opportunities to come up with something that would be agreeable. For example, right now, if you go on the website, and I'm impressed the representatives that went to look, that they're stating mechanical engineer. Those folks have every right to supposed to say mechanical engineer, Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering. That's because that they have acquired that educational piece. There may be other things that if that is a private company that is doing engineering work internal and they have supervising professionals, I think the representative hinted at that. If they very clearly stated that they're not providing professional engineering services, it's not completely cut and dry that you, at all cases, at all times, you can't say engineer, but it needs to be clear that you're not offering or doing the service of professional engineering.
Thank you. I'm opposed to the way it's written currently as implying engineer, so I would hope Presley would work with us on the floor beforehand to get this resolved, so it's not a big debate on the floor again.
These things come up every so often, and this is, it's kind of a, no offense to the representative, it's kind of a sledgehammer to fix a a problem that's probably fixable.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rep. Gudo. The board is clear. Rep. Presley, would you like to reclose?
You know, sometimes, as we've all learned, sledgehammers are what get people to the table, and sledgehammer bills are necessary in order to make sure that we can address the small things. With that, I'm going to voluntarily defer for a week to try to get this issue worked out, and I'm very optimistic and hopeful that everyone will come to the table in good faith. I know that I will in trying to address this. So thank you very much, members.
Thank you, Rep. Presley, and I appreciate Fiberbond for coming. I know this was. Oh, any opposition to that? We don't have a quorum. Do we have 9? Y'all sit down, please. Okay, we have quorum now. Okay, so Rep. Okay, we're going to withdraw the motion to move this bill favorably. We are going to take up Representative Presley's motion to voluntarily defer the bill. Any objection to withdrawing? Okay, first of all, any objection to withdrawing the motion to move favorably? Seeing none, that motion is withdrawn. Now we'll take up the motion by Rep. Presley to voluntarily defer the bill. Any objection for 1 week? Any objection? Seeing none, it is withdrawn, and this bill will be taken up next week.